Ritalin seems to be always the first point of call when somebody's diagnosed with ADHD. Is that because that's the most logical step, or is that a funding thing, or is that, like, what's the perspective there? Because obviously there's quite a lot of different medications, and I mean, we can go into the difference between stimulants and non-stimulants, but yeah, like, what's the thought process around that?
Yeah, the Ritalin type medicines, so methylphenidate's usually number one.
Yeah.
And the reasons for that, well, it's been most studied, so it's, most of the studies around ADHD medicines involve methylphenidate type things, and it tends to have the best balance of effect and adverse effects. So the balance of that is pretty good for methylphenidate. And about 70% of people do well with that medicine, straight up.
Yeah.
So get a good response from Ritalin, whereas response rates from some of the other medicines are a bit lower. So it's the main reason. I think in Australia they used to use dexamphetamine first.
Right.
Back in the day. I think it was a funding type thing, but
Right.
yeah, funding doesn't really have an impact on that initial choice. It's really those other things. Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah. So that leads into, what's the difference between the stimulants and non-stimulants treatment for ADHD?
Yeah. So stimulants are usually number one, unless there's a reason not to do that, and sometimes there is a reason. Someone might have, really strong family history of bipolar disorder and have some quite uneven mood or bipolar symptoms, and that might make you think about something else. So the stimulants include methylphenidate, that's the Ritalin, Ribavirin, Concerta. Now there's something called Tiva, extended release, another medicine. So they're all methylphenidate, and then the other stimulants, dexamphetamine, and in New Zealand we can only get short-acting dexamphetamine, and the stimulants work for a period of time when they're in your system, so they're absorbed pretty quickly, and then they work for a duration of action, and that's quite different for some of them. Some of them are short-acting, some intermediate, and some long-acting, and they kind of have different profiles in your system, so some work better early on and some work pretty well later in the day. And they have the best effect for school or for people at work, so may last for up to 10 hours or so, and then they're out of your system and don't work. So that's the stimulants. And then the third medicine we would usually use in New Zealand would be atomoxetine or Strattera, and that kind of has the tick for ADHD. And it's not a stimulant, it's kind of chemically more related to an antidepressant, and takes a little while to build up in the system. You have to take it every day, and when it does work, it works across the 24-hour period, so it doesn't have that on-off effect. But overall, it's kind of somewhat less helpful for school. So on average, it would have about 2/3 the effect of a stimulant. So less good for school, but sometimes better for out of school things. So sometimes, if home is much more of an issue than school, atomoxetine might be something worth thinking about. But often it's school issues which are causing the most difficulty. And then there's some other medicines that have the tick for ADHD in the States. So there's some medicines called alpha agonists, and they started out being blood pressure medicines, a medicine called clonidine. And then they've designed some longer acting forms of that which have been evaluated pretty well and have about the same effect as atomoxetine overall.
Right.
And in New Zealand we have a short-acting form of clonidine which we don't really use for, it's not indicated for ADHD, but we can use it what's called off-label. So that just means it hasn't got the tick, but we can still use it, but we have to tell everybody we're using it off-label. And we use that medicine sometimes for things like Tourette's disorder, used to use it for sleep, getting off to sleep before melatonin. And it's sometimes used with ADHD by itself, but also occasionally used with a stimulant. And there's an application actually with Pharmac at the moment for a long-acting version of something called guanfacine, but it's just winding its way through the Pharmac process. I'm not sure how it will go, but hopefully it gets funded, because that's a very helpful medicine and would be a really good fourth choice
Right. Yeah.
for people that don't do well with the others.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
but they're the main meds.